Hi, so this is the architectural technologist. We got Ethan, and I'm really pleased to introduce Gus Watt. I've worked with Gus for several years, and I've really been inspired by his architecture, particularly the humorous side of the things that you do, Gus. As soon as I start thinking about the Frederick Street Apartments, of course, I start thinking about the mosaic on the front wall and the motorbike with the headlight in it, which I seem to remember you can turn on and shine across the road, which I always thought was really humorous. But it brings up the question that a lot of your work has got humor in it. And I'm wondering when you started to think it was a good idea to bring humor into your architecture.
When I thought about it was probably from day one, even when I was at the school. You used to do in those days, I don't know whether you did that, but you did everything was done by hand, obviously, hand drawing. And the drawings I used to do, you put in cartoon characters into them. I used to put in the guys from Foot Rock Flat, old Walt, his name,
And the dog.
Walt, he'd be walking along. And in fact, even did that in one of the competitions I entered probably way back in time. There was a competition for housing up in Auckland somewhere. And I did a lot of, they were all sod roof houses but they were just connected up. And anyway, the drawings all had those characters in them. And if you do it on the drawings, you tend to do it in, well, like you say, on the mosaics that I did on the apartments in Frederick Street. But they really came about only came about because initially it was a painted facade, and then with a body cork, which is always a good body cork, which you only had 4 people to talk about it. And I suggested, or in fact, I showed them a building of, God, I've forgotten his name. He's dead, of course. You'll remember his name. He did the toilets way up north,
Hunterwasser.
Hundertwasser. I showed them his building in Vienna, which was all black and white tiles. And I just said to them, why don't we actually tile it so we don't have to, that'll be a oncer and we don't have to get some painters in to paint it. And yeah, that's a good idea. All started from there. And so I just started off doing our particular piece. And then I thought the dog that we had, Bogart, I just put him sitting beside our front door. And that sort of developed into, as you say, the guy next door, he rode a Harley. And I said, why don't you do a Harley on there? So I did that for him. And it looked a bit silly on its own. Said we could get some character to put on there. So he found the photograph of James Dean. And I put him on there. And so those are and we had I left a space for the other two to put whatever they wanted to put on. And an interesting thing about the James Dean one was that I think I told you this the other day, that now it's a regular, one of those guided walks that people do. And my neighbor said that this guy comes around with tourists every so often, and they have photographs taken beside the motorbike and tour buses apparently have gone down there as well, stopping and photographing. But the next one, it took a long time for the lady next door to decide what she wanted, but she decided she wanted a sheep, and she gave me a little drawing of something which was just a farmyard scene with sheep running around on a hill, which I thought was just awful. And I said, well, I'll do you something, but you've got to do this, which was a merino sheep with the horns, like a full-size one. But you've also got to let me put in Foot Rot, so he's standing there. Now, I don't know whether you've seen it since that's been done. It's been a few years old now.
No, I don't think it's in your photo on your website.
No, it won't be. I should probably put it on. I might have it somewhere on the photograph of it, but anyway, so she did that one. The guy at the end, he had a chemist shop, so he was going to initially, because he sold perfumes, et cetera, I said, well, we could do you that classic photograph of Marilyn Monroe with the skirt blowing up over one of the underground vents. And he thought that'd be a good idea. I did a sketch of that, but he didn't want to pay me to do anything. He's just still got a black hole, if you like, outside the garage door. But we went from there. At one of the meetings, probably a few years after that, was, when are you going to do something? And he said, I don't know what to do. And his son was living there. His son's a musician. So I said, we could do a guy sort of playing the trumpet or one of those classic photos. So I found a good one of those to do. And but he still didn't want to pay. So there's still a black hole. Anyway, all those came about. But it's just I just love thinking of, in fact, the latest thing I've actually just done here, Jonathan, is outside our front door. We had, when Bogart died, I had him plastered. I got his ashes and mixed it up into some plaster, and I plastered a sort of a 2-dimensional dog onto the outside our front door, and I just painted it. I gave him a couple of teddy bear's eyes, and so they're real eyes, but he was just all red, so it was just and a flat image of him. But our next dog, Mojo, we had her put down a few months ago, and I've done the same with her, and I actually painted her, not tiled, I painted her on there, was sitting on a cushion on the other side of the front door, and it was quite an extraordinary likeness. I was very pleased with that. The likeness was so good that Jill, every time Jill goes in there, she almost bursts into tears. In fact, she did the first time she saw it because it looked so good. And so because I made Mojo look so good, I'm in the process of actually painting the real Bogart on the other side rather than a flat image done. So, but it's just those things that I love getting a kick out of. You've been to this place here, haven't you? You must have been to mine.
The stormwater outlet, the water off the roof coming out of the fish's mouth, like a little gargoyle, which makes me, why is humour important in architecture?
It just gives, hopefully, anyone that looks at these, looks at the humour, and it can, even if they just smile, that you know that you've hit something. And I just love doing it. There's too much boring stuff, particularly at the moment, with all these townhouses that are being built. They just like cookie cutter things. They're all the same. They're all the same colours, generally beige, or we've got a couple of black ones in Petone, but they're all identical and the same. And sometimes I almost make you weep. You see the way they're advertising these things and selling them, presumably. But if you can get a buzz out of something from either yourself or the people you're doing it for, it's just the joy of life. It adds to your joys, isn't it? That's what I feel about it.
I think it's really important. And you talked about the tour buses going to visit Frederick Street. When I was in Wellington with my children, I made them go and stand and have a look to see what you'd done as well. So I totally understand that people go and visit it. But it must be lovely to know that it's such a thing that you just did it just to bring joy to a few people, but it actually brings joy to people all the time. Every time they go down the street, they smile at that work.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. And I tell you what, there is you would know the other one that I did on the corner, Taranaki and Vivian Street, which was the Gibson Group film people, and it's still owned by his wife, not Vivian. Anyway, it's still owned by her. She just rang me the other day to say that she wanted to put one of those digital adverts on it so it keeps changing. And so she had to get resource consent to do that. And when she rang the council, whoever she spoke to said, I don't think you'll be able to do that because that's an iconic building with that mural on it. And so she's now battling council to say, because of the fact that, do you remember that one?
Yeah, I've actually got it on my screen at the moment so that Ethan can see what you're talking about. Yeah, so it's got a series of terrace houses, old working men's cottages.
No, they're not. They're just warehouses.
They're warehouses.
It's an industrial look to it. So that was just all corrugated iron, all of it. And so you can see the pitch roof on the left side. That was the one that had a pukeko sort of standing on the ridge and a cat walking along behind her trying to grab him. And then around the corner where the lights are on the top, there's a chimney that goes up from the middle gable. And one of those roofs has got a seagull on it. Both of those things that were standing on the ridge, they've fallen off. And some time ago now, whoever found them just kept them. So she was really annoyed that when they fell off that they were never given back to them to put back up again. But they probably rusted away, or the copper wouldn't have rusted away, but the copper and the galvanized edge don't go together, but they lasted for a number of years. But anyway, that on the corner, that's where she wants to put a digital advert. And I said, I've got no objection to that. She just rang me to tell me in case someone from council rang and asked me whether I wanted to let her do it. I thought, how extraordinary. Anyway, there we are. So that's a famous building. There's two famous buildings just around the corner from each other.
They are. And they bring a lot of joy. Every time I go past them, of course, it brings me joy to see them. The Gibson Group company, of course, is real easy to see because it's on the way to the airport. And so you see it all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
The other one I have to go out of my way to see, but I still do.
I'm pleased that you do that. Yeah. So only, as you see, there's only one point, which is probably where the photograph was taken from, but at road level, that's where it actually works as a perspective.
Yeah, because when you're in your car and you'd come up to it, you're at exactly the right height because the buildings look small and the sky blends in with the sky because you got that, you painted that sky color. So it all blends in and you just don't notice the scale of that building. Gus, I think it's probably time we wrapped up, but I really appreciate you giving us your time. You've been very kind to give us your time this morning. I just wonder if you've got some lessons for a young architect or for a young designer.
What sort of lessons? How to get started?
No, but things that are important.
We've probably talked about the things that are important. The things that I love about design would be what we've just been talking about. The idea of humor, putting humor into something and giving joy to whoever's living in it or moving through it or whatever. Those are the things that I think make a building. There are buildings around that probably very good buildings that have got awards for them. But I do recall one building that got an award, which is the Wellington, the airport building, one that Craig Muller did years ago. The main building, and I thought that, I'm sure I said to some at the time, I wouldn't have given it an award at the time because the worst thing about that building is it's a full glass face, 2-story high glass face facing due west. And it's got no...
Thanks a lot, Gus.
And it's got no sun shading on it. And if you go in there, it's just like being in a sauna. And it wouldn't have taken much to put some sort of shading over it. But so there are probably buildings that get awards or like that. But the rest of the building is fine. But where do you stop and start? Like some buildings that go up, you would only get an award because of who built it or who designed it, or they're not all great buildings. That's what I feel. That probably doesn't answer your question. But anyway, if you're thinking of being an architect, you don't want to think you're going to be raking in the money because there are not many very wealthy people out there. Probably the one that I know would be, I've mentioned his name before, Terry Dykes, and he wouldn't mind me mentioning his name as being one of the wealthiest architects around, but he didn't make his money out of architecture. He made it out of basically property development, and he's still doing it even though he's getting on in years, but he's still involved in it, and I know he really enjoys it. And he's probably the only, apart from Roger Walker, he's got a Ferrari that he bought years and years ago. But Terry probably upgrades his Ferrari every few years to the latest model. He's the businessman. I'm the architect.
I really appreciate you giving up your time today.
That's all right. Not a problem. Okay. I'll go and have a coffee now. It's time to go.
So what other advice have you got for a young designer, Gus?
I would just say that if you really want to be an architect and you love the thought of doing it, it's not all design work. There's a lot of hard work in between, project management and all that type of thing. But if you love it, do it. And if you still love it after 40 or 50 years, you've done the right thing. You probably haven't made any money, but you've done the right thing.
Thanks a lot, Gus.
Okay.